The dream is to own your own business, to be your own boss. But that means that many of those people are not able to meet their personal or private living expenses. So think about it for a moment. Just because a business is still running doesn't mean it's profitable or that it can even meet its financial obligations.
Firmer Figures knows your money, cuts down on strife. Time to trust your future. Firmer Figures, love your life.
The Firmer Figures Business Show is brought to you by Financial Gym Studios. Welcome to the only gym where someone else does the working out for you, where you get impartial tips and strategies in plain English to help you understand your money, love your business, and trust your future. Introducing your host, author, speaker, and creator of Firmer Figures, the cantankerous coach, Georgette Roland Osborne.
Publicly rich, privately poor, high achievers who are one emergency away from financial ruin. Shelter, the homeless charity, produced findings that just under 40% of working families are one pay packet away from being homeless. Let's put it another way. Out of every 3 families in the UK, working families, one of them will not be able to pay their living expenses or even just their rent or mortgage if they were to lose their jobs. To make matters worse, there's also no guarantee that they'd actually be able to find another job immediately. The scary thing is that 10 years ago, the figure was around 1 in 4 families, so it means that that percentage is increasing. This is in addition to government figures highlighting the huge number of working adults who, on top of, well, it's probably the main reason, that they are unable to cover an emergency is that they actually have no savings at all. The figure they give is 16.5 million, which is a staggering amount when you think about how many people there are in the population of the UK. And as I said before, these are working adults, not those on benefits or unemployed, working families or working adults. And the figures don't differentiate between whether they are employed, self-employed, directors or any. I'm sure that there are statistics to show that. I will say I'm sure, I would expect there would be, but these particular figures don't. So that means within that 1 in 3 are entrepreneurs, self-employed, business owners per se. So if these people are in that bracket, the dream is to own your own business, to be your own boss. But that means that many of those people are not able to meet their personal or private living expenses. So what does that mean? Well, it means that entrepreneurship, even though we look at it, and it does have an element of glamour, I suppose you can call it. I mean, I'm not saying you're living in Saint-Tropez or Monaco or somewhere, but the thought of being an entrepreneur and the stereotypical sitting on a beach with a laptop and a daiquiri sitting next to you is what we all would love to be able to do. But for every Uber or Airbnb or Amazon, Dollar Shaver Club, there are thousands and thousands of businesses that just about break even. The internet has been responsible for an explosion of opportunities and for creating income streams, some good, some not so good. Many of them are quick money-making schemes and others are more sustainable. The difference with the online world is that the people behind the businesses are more visible than any type of business owner has ever been before, certainly more than the average business owner in the bricks and mortar world. We know names of companies, unless they're PLCs or large corporates or retail. It's unlikely that we know the business owners behind most of the businesses that we see, privately owned small businesses we see on our high streets. But one thing is consistent, regardless of the business setup, whether it be brick and mortar or it is the new fashionable or newer fashionable online. What glitters is not always gold. The online even guru that you see telling you to join their program to build a 6 or 7 figure may well have built that 6 or 7 figure. Not all of them have, but some may well. But even if they've built one, you want to know something? It doesn't mean that they can afford the lifestyle that they show you. And I'm one of those people. That's why I've never sold the millionaire dream, because I don't live the millionaire dream. Doing all right, nicely, thank you very much. But that's not what I'm about. That's not what interests me anyway. So what I'm saying is I could make money, but my real skill is in allocating and managing it. So that's what I teach people to do. I don't teach you to create a 7-figure business. Believe me, there are far more qualified people out there to do that. And I've worked with people who have money coming into bank accounts, PayPal accounts, Stripe accounts, Bitcoin on a daily basis, yet still struggle to pay their personal household bills or expenses, or maybe they're comfortable but they're struggling to do anything above that, which goes back to the government statistic of very few people having any form of savings. How come? Well, there are a few reasons. I talked about this in a previous episode called 6-Figure Business But I'm Broke, and you can find that at financialgymforbusiness.com/24. The reason number one is, as a business grows, more than likely so do the expenses. So even though they've got a bigger turnover, there's actually less profit to play with. It's a shock to people, because if you imagine you're always striving to get this magical 6 figures, say, it could be 7 for you, this magical 6 figures, but there are more and more expenses that are attached to that you would not have seen coming. And those things eat into what would have been the money that you could take out. But that's at the grassroots level of the money coming out of the business. The other thing about the business itself could be the business model. I mean, many online products and services are sold via big launches, and they happen at particular times of the year. So all the money is made at a particular time, and some quite substantial amounts from what I've seen. The downside is that in between, there's little or no money for the rest of the time. So you have this feast and famine situation, which I actually experienced in one of my brick and mortar businesses. We did water coolers, and we would make hay during the winter months. But in the summer, it was wonderful, because from about May, June, July, August, that's when the majority of our money came in. So we had to really, I suppose that's where I really learned to hone the skills of managing the money on top of everything else, was the fact that in the winter months, the money was coming in and we had recurring business models, so it was fine. But the profit wasn't really seen until those summer months. So we had to learn to allocate it across the year. So as a business model, it was a difficult one. There's other things external in 2015, almost seemingly out of the blue to so many people. We had the European VAT MOS scheme that came in that required providers of digital products to declare VAT based on the location of the buyer. Now, many micro businesses decided just to cease trading, or not even to start up what they were going to do if that had been their plan, because the bureaucracy, compliance paperwork would have been so much, it would have just crushed them. And they were just so afraid of falling foul of revenue and customs. And to many small businesses, some big businesses actually as well, dealing with the revenue on any level is just far too stressful. And there are other things. Google, for example, many businesses were based on being able to understand the Google algorithm and knowing how to drive business to drive traffic to their site and convert it into business. Overnight, Google changes an algorithm, and many people saw the businesses that they had, or the business models that were working so well, just like that, and literally overnight disappear. I've heard of one recently where somebody had 2 million, I think it was, followers, and that, so imagine followers in their list, and that 2 million generated them thousands and thousands and thousands in affiliate sales. And then just like that, due to algorithm changes, that tap turned off, and it's quite a recent situation actually. The panic set in, and now they're going to have to find another way to generate the income, only to tell whether they'll be able to get back to where they were. So these things happen. It's not always necessarily what's happening internally with the business. So think about it for a moment. Just because a business is still running doesn't mean it's profitable, or that it can even meet its financial obligations. To the naked eye, they are successful business people. An owner or director of a business could still struggle to take out money for themselves, but the business be paying itself very well. So from the get-go, there's a financial problem. And the people that find themselves in this kind of stress fall into three groups. You've got the people who would like to start a business. They've been dreaming of it. They're in cubicle hell, as it's called. But they just are afraid to make the move because there just isn't enough money to be able to take the leap and survive if they couldn't get sales in quickly. And we know, if you've been there before, it always takes a lot longer to get income in, and the expenses come in a whole lot quicker than we think. So there are those. And then you've got entrepreneurs who are profitable. They can pay themselves, but they also have little or no financial cushion. So this isn't generally about how much money or need to make more money. It's about not being really tough or really on it when it comes to them knowing where their money is moving, how the money's flowing. I call it not knowing where the drains are in your cash flow. It's flowing out into the sewer. And then you have those who have a business. So they've started. They're not as established as the ones who can pay themselves. These are the silent majority, and they're stuck in the middle. And many of them are not yet making a profit or just about making a profit, but still not sufficient in the business to be able to fund themselves, sometimes barely fund themselves. How many times, if you're in business, have you decided to pay yourself last or not pay yourself? There are many directors out there who are on the payroll, claiming the payroll, paying the tax to the taxman every month, but not physically taking the cash out for themselves. And these are the majority, I would say, of the people that I meet when I start to work with them. That changes over time, but that's where a lot of them are. In fact, they come to me, or people come to me and want to work with me, because one of the most common questions is either one, when can I pay myself, or two, when can I stop putting money in the business to cover the bills? So in all of these groups, you'll find people struggling with debt, unpredictable cash flow, and fear about their financial future. To make things worse, if the business is struggling, an entrepreneur may be forced to use personal money to plug the holes, as I alluded to earlier. And in order to do it, they often put themselves in a worse situation than the business is in. Maybe it's just a simple case of you've just got to generate more income, but as we say, that can take time. So they will end up having to do things such as remortgage their home. They borrow from friends and family. They use personal credit cards, which is what I did in my very first business. In fact, I didn't so much use personal credit cards for the business. I tended to use it to cover my home life while the business could hang on to money. Or taking out personal loans, which we know are not supposed to be for business, but just so they can get the money in order to either put it into the business or to cover both the business and the home life, or just the home life, whichever, in the interim. But often what happens is it just goes in the business, because the belief is if the business has the money, the business has the ability to generate the income, and when the business is all right and making money, then I'll be able to take what's due to me. The tragedy is so often this doesn't happen because the business just keeps swallowing the money. To add to the stress, it just can take a long time, as I say, to get the money back. But often where a lot of businesses go to the wall is when you look at them, they're actually quite profitable. But there's so much money owed to the owner in the business that they just had to get out. They just had to get the albatross from around their neck so that they could breathe, so they could start again and do what needed to do just so they can carry on and pay the mortgage, pay the rent, put little Johnny through school and eat. This is more likely to happen through the startup phase of a business, unless you've managed to get funding. And for most people, funding really is not an option. Most small businesses are not investable because the return on them is not wonderful. And I talk about this in a previous episode where I give you some tips on how to get funded without actually taking out a bank loan. So go check that out. Can't actually remember what number it is right now, but if you go to financialgymforbusiness.com/blog, you'll find it on there. Now, I was approached by Sean, a 30-something entrepreneur who just opened a restaurant. It was a lovely theme-based restaurant. And what he was having to do was take rents from his property portfolio and put the money straight into his business bank account. He did it quite happily in the beginning while he was refurbishing. Then the business opened and they were getting customers and they were packed out every night and things looked wonderful. But every few weeks he was having to put in another $4,000, another $5,000, another $10,000. So the money was coming from his properties, but it was going straight to the business. He wasn't even touching his personal accounts at all. So he had no benefit from that money outside of the business. So one business was basically being eaten away because sometimes there would be money that those properties need if there was a repair or something, and the money had been put into the business. So we stopped that happening. We had to make sure that at least some was still staying as a buffer for the properties. Anyway, initially, as I say, it was fine. But what started to get to him was, he said the question, when will it be possible for me not to have to keep injecting this money? The point I'm trying to make is, as distressing as it was for him, he had one specific advantage over most people in the situation. He could afford to do it. The specifics were he was taking money from his rental properties to pay into the business, but he was still living the same way he always had in his private life, because before the business came along, all the money, or a good percentage of the money that he was getting from his rental properties and other activities, he was putting away. He was very big on the Robert Kiyosaki's cash flow, almost evangelical. But in fairness to him, he followed a lot of those principles. And now when he needed it, it was actually paying off. I mean, he was fed up, but he wasn't worried. And that, my friend, is what I want for you. What separates people like Sean from other people who would have collapsed under that kind of pressure? I'll tell you. The reality of personal finances has very little to do with the state of the entrepreneur's business, or if you're employed still, not yet gone into entrepreneurship, how much money you earn, so how good your job is. After working with and studying hundreds and hundreds of people over the last 20 years, and obviously having my own issues, I became fascinated with the impact of personal money as well as business money on entrepreneurs themselves, the human being, the person. And I found that business people who successfully managed their personal money practiced or lived by 5 main rules, which I called the miser rules. And miser rules as in MIISER. Ironically, you probably don't want to be a miser, but actually that's kind of what you want to be. And the 6 rules of miser are: they practice or they have financial motivation. Now, none of these are suggesting that they love dealing with money or they live to deal with money. I trained in accounting and bookkeeping and finance, and I did not love accounting one iota, hence why I did not decide to go into it as a profession in the end. So it doesn't mean that at all. It means that there's a reason behind, but I'll go into those. So they love financial motivation. They have financial intelligence, or they seek out financial intelligence. They seek out financial information. They have financial systems in place. They listen to financial experts, and they practice financial routines. Every time I encountered someone who was very good with their personal finances, I looked at how they utilize miser, and I wanted to see what they were doing to get the results that they did. If you're poor or lacking in any of the areas of miser and you make lots of money initially, you will see an improvement in your personal circumstances because you can afford more. There's just more money, you can afford more. But over time, apart from the fact you can afford more, you start to spend more. Well, I used to drive a Cinquecento. Now I drive a 5 Series BMW. And if you're prone to running up debt, then you will go back into debt at some point. We revert back to type. The difference is, using debt as an example, is at this time, the debt, just like when you lose weight and then you put it back on again, you often do it even worse than you did before, is that the debt has come about a little bit more under the radar. It's not because you couldn't afford things, so you're not being as worried about it. It's simply because you just got used to using credit. And in the back of your mind, well, I've got the money now, I can afford to pay it off whenever. But you don't. So not only have you slipped back into old habits, assuming the habits changed at all, with the extra money you have to play with, you just become less cautious because you don't feel as cash strapped as you did before. And then it all goes pear-shaped again, and then you panic, so you go and get out a consolidation loan, or you're trying to find tactics to get you back on track again, or you start moving balances from one card to another. Or if it gets really bad, then you take on debt management plans, and oh my gosh, my head just hurts thinking about all of these things. So the key to stop is to go back to basics, to get clued up and start again. Like with the PC, I always use a PC example. When things start to go wrong and you're clicking and it's just not going right, sometimes you just stop and turn it off, let it rest, and come back at it later on. So over this little mini-series, I'm going to briefly take you through each of the miser rules so that you can see how to do these things. And I'll try my best not to make them as they sound, because when you think about how these principles can change your financial world and your world per se, you'll thank me. Trust me, you will. Is this you? You've been in business for years, but your personal situation is just not improving. No matter how much you earn or you take home, you cannot seem to accumulate enough cash to reduce your financial stress. Well, introducing the How to Build a Buffer of Personal Money and Stay Out of Debt checklist. It's a quick start system that will help you reduce debt, increase savings, protect your future, and enjoy yourself today without monthly boring budgeting. What you get is a one-page checklist that shows you the steps that you need to take to change your situation forever. And if you get the checklist, you also get access to a free mini course that takes you a little deeper. And this is for you if you are in debt, you're just covering expenses, maybe you're ticking along, or you're getting used to having more money coming in than you are normally accustomed to, and you can do this system even if your earnings stay the same each month or fluctuate. Isn't it time you paid yourself first? Go get your checklist and mini course at financialgymforbusiness.com/PBC. That's P for Papa, B for Bravo, C. See you there.
Firmer Figures knows your money, cuts down on strife. Time to trust your future. Firmer Figures, love your life.